Chapter 17, Physical Activity, Exercise, Successful Aging, and Disease Prevention. Objectives are: describe the meaning of the term health span, explain the concepts of successful aging compared to traditional views of aging process, distinguishing between terms of exercise and physical activity, explain the basis of physical activity, the physical activity pyramid, answer the question, how safe is exercise, describe the goals of Healthy People 2010, what is SEDS, why is it important, why is it so important, list the important age-related changes in muscular strength, joint flexibility, nervous system function, cardiovascular function, pulmonary function, endocrine function, and body composition. Describe the 5 field tests to assess flexibility in major body areas. Describe the research showing that regular physical activity protects against disease and may even extend life. List the 3 major causes of death in the U.S. List and describe the 4 major coronary heart disease risk factors. List the secondary and novel risk factors for coronary heart disease. List the specific components of the blood lipid profile and give values considered desirable for each. Discuss the factors that affect cholesterol lipoprotein levels, the lipoprotein levels, and explain how regular physical activity reduces coronary heart disease risk. Describe the recurrence of CHD, coronary heart disease risk factors in children. Explain the interactions between coronary heart disease risk factors. So the new gerontology, we're starting on page 584. Researchers basically see individuals now as being 85, being the oldest old. It used to be like 65. So people are living longer. The question is how well are they living? Okay. The difference between mortality and morbidity. I mean, morbidity, you have these factors that cause you to live a life that's not very healthy, but you're still alive. Okay. And mortality obviously is how long you live until you die, the death, until death occurs. So you have health span as a number of years a person remains in excellent health, and then new gerontology addresses areas beyond age-related disease and prevention. To recognize successful aging requires maintenance of enhanced physiological function and physical fitness. Successful aging includes these components of physical health, spirituality, emotional, educational health, and social satisfaction. This is on page 584. It talks about projected population 100 years and over in thousands. Okay, so look how much it's gone up. And then probability of 65-year-old will live until this age. So you have 70, which is almost close to 100. So you have the age of, let's say, you have these different ages. So if you have this on the left side, you have age is, what's the chance of 70% chance to live to over a certain this age. Okay, so the percentage chances are on the bottom, the x-axis. Okay, so you have like this, obviously you have the age of 60, around 60 of 85% probability that you'll live to age 60, and so on and so forth, upward of up toward 100, age of 100, 70% chance probability. So you have this life expectancy, and then you have the length of life, and then you have healthy life expectancy. This is living without ill health. Okay, life expectancy of prominent factors in order of importance responsible for decreased life expectancy in the non-Western countries, which are low birth weight, vitamin and mineral deficiency, unsafe water, sanitation, unsafe sex, HIV, introduction of carcinogens, work-related risk. And these are based on the non-Western countries, so there's not a lot of safety procedures, things like that. But yet in the Western world, we have issues such as that are responsible for decreased life expectancy, such as tobacco use, high blood pressure, blood cholesterol, obesity, low level of physical activity, limited fruit and vegetable consumption. Physical activity epidemiology. So epidemiology is, incidence, distribution, and control of disease and such in populations. So you have this, like it says here, we're trying to see what is the relevant terminology in regards to this. So what health-related behaviors are linked to disease and other outcomes. So you have relevant terminology, including physical activity, exercise, and physical fitness. Okay. Physical activity obviously is body movement, produced muscle action, increases energy. Exercise is planned, structured, repetitive, purposeful. Physical activity, and then physical fitness, which is attributes are related to how well one performs physical activity. And this is the pyramid, okay? And you're trying to reduce at the top, just like the food pyramid. What are you trying to reduce at the food pyramid? Is high amounts of fats, okay, refined sugar, and so you also have things here such in this physical activity pyramid. You're trying to increase at the bottom. Daily is often carrying groceries, stair climbing, walking to work, pushing a lawnmower. And then above that is at least 3 times a week, aerobic exercise, recreational activity, recreational exercise. And then twice a week you have at least twice a week you have lifestyle activities, golf, gardening, flexibility and strength. And then, yoga, light to moderate resistance training. And then you're trying to reduce TV viewing, internet surfing, excess reading, computer use. Physical activity, you also have these a continuation of epidemiology of health, which is physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease. And then health-related physical fitness, which are components of physical fitness associated with some aspects of good health and or disease prevention. So you have aerobic cardiovascular fitness, body composition, abdominal muscular strength and endurance, flexibility, and then longevity, which is length of life. So in the United States, you have 15% engage in regular vigorous physical activity during leisure time, 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes. But greater than 60% do not engage in any regular physical activity, which is pretty unbelievable. 25% lead sedentary lifestyles, okay, do not exercise. And then you talk about walking, gardening, yard work are the most popular leisure time activities, which are fine. If you do those or you do structured physical activity, they're both equally beneficial. You can add up the minutes of those things of movement, but obviously, vigorous physical activity is going to be more beneficial than moderate. And amounts of gardening and walking and yard work it's all dose dependent as well. You have 22% engage in light to moderate physical activity regularly during leisure time, 5 times a week for at least 30 minutes. And then physical inactivity occurs more frequently in women, blacks, and Hispanics, and older adults and less affluent. Physical activity and participation in children, teenagers in the United States. So nearly 1/2 of 12 to 21-year-olds don't exercise vigorously on a regular basis, regardless of gender, which is pretty high. It's 50%. I mean, that's pretty amazing. About 14% no recent physical activity. It's more prevalent among females, particularly black females. You have about 25% engage in light to moderate physical activity, walking, bicycling nearly every day. Participation in all types of physical activity decline as we age and school grades increase. More males than females participate in vigorous physical activity, strengthening activity, and walking or bicycling. So weight training, things like that. First Surgeon General's report on physical activity and health, released in '96 by the Surgeon General of the United States, acknowledged the importance of physical activity to the nation and summarized the benefits of regular physical activity disease prevention. They proposed the national agenda that urged the nation to adopt and maintain a physically active lifestyle to combat ailments associated with the country's low level of energy expenditure. So this is to offset these hypokinetic diseases. This stated that all citizens should include moderate physical activity on most, if not all, days of the week. So this was launched on January. Healthy People 2010 was launched on January 25th, 2000. And it builds on the initiatives of the previous 2 decades as an instrument to improve on national health for the first decade of the 21st century. This outlines comprehensive nationwide health promotion, disease prevention agenda as a roadmap to promote health and prevent illness, disability, premature death among all people in the United States. Attempts to achieve two goals: to increase quality in years of health and eliminate health disparities among nation's citizens. About the safety of exercise. So, safety of exercise is actually exercise is safe. They're seeing it more and more because there's even the death rates actually declined over the past 25 years despite an increase in exercise participation. 2 complications per 100,000 hours of exercise for women, and 3 complications out of 100,000 hours for men are the only things that we're seeing, and that's a pretty low rate, okay, of complications of exercise. The relative risk of sudden death among athletes versus non-athletes is 1.95 for males, 2 for females, due to underlying cardiovascular issues. So the exercise can unearth certain things. An arrhythmia can take place, but that is an underlying cardiovascular issue anyway. That maybe some physical activity unearths. One study, sudden death per 1.5 million episodes of intense physical exertion, and then 11.2 injuries, sports and recreation related per 100,000 population participants. So that's pretty low as well. Sedentary death syndrome. This is a collection of disorders that basically that are directly caused or worsened by physical inactivity that ends in death. So this will contribute to 1 in 10 premature deaths and cost $1.5 trillion in healthcare expenses in the United States in the next decade. This really leads to these are hypokinetic causation for these things, the lack of movement. Children are now experiencing SEDS related diseases. SEDS relates to 26 medically related conditions. And really it's you're talking about type 2 diabetes, increase in type 2 diabetes about 9-fold since 1958, a doubling of obesity since 1980, heart disease still being a lead cause of death, children under 12 now experiencing this sedentary death syndrome related from increased overweightness, showing fatty streaks in arteries, and developing type 2 diabetes at an alarming rate. And so some of these conditions include angina, heart attack, coronary artery disease, arthritis pain, arrhythmias, breast cancer, colon cancer, congestive heart failure, depression, digestive problems, gallstone disease, esophageal disease, high blood triglyceride level, high blood cholesterol level, hypertension, less cognitive function. You have higher amounts of LDLs, increased amounts of HDLs, lower quality of life, stroke, sleep apnea, all those things, which are terrible. Aging and bodily functions. You have aging and muscular strength. So men and women achieve max strength between age 20 and 30. When muscle cross-sectional area often achieves maximal size. In men, you have this decrease in testosterone after 30, endogenously, meaning internally produced, which leads then to also muscle hypertrophy, which is muscle size, which is cross-sectional area. So because of that, it makes sense that the strength is the greatest between 20 and 30 years, and then afterward it declines. Thereafter, strength progressively declines. We must talk about this by age 70. Overall general strength is decreased by 30%. Strength decreases because of sarcopenia, which is muscle loss. And then regular exercise retains body protein and blunts the loss of muscle mass and strength with aging. So especially resistance training blunts the loss of muscle mass, obviously, because you're creating testosterone. Testosterone is released whenever you do weight training, resistance training. And so it's basically blunting this lack of muscular size that occurs anyway with aging, but it slows this muscle loss down, the sarcopenia down. And that's what this says here: general level of physiological function percentage. And so you have this sedentary and gray and in active individuals. You still have this level of physiological function decline, but it doesn't happen at the rate of. So you have, look here and you say, look at 75 for the, or at the bottom you look at age. You look at the age of, let's say, 70, and you see that at 70 it's almost at this level of physiological function. At 70 it's close to maybe what, 90, and at 70 for an individual who's active. And if you look at 70, a person who's inactive, you have it at a level of about 75% of physiological function. Aging bodily function. You have aging and joint flexibility. So connective tissue becomes stiffer, more rigid, which reduces joint flexibility as you age. Exercise that regularly move joints through full range of motion. Decreased flexibility 20-30% in men and women of all ages. So flexibility, let me talk about this. Flexibility is increased through full range of motion. Flexibility exercises for increased flexibility about 20-50% in men and women. So that's a great increase. So that's why flexibility exercises are so important. Endocrine changes with aging. So 40% of those 65 to 75 and 50% of those older than 80 have impaired glucose tolerance, meaning that there's too much glucose in the blood. Okay, it leads to type 2 diabetes. You have insulin resistance. Okay, and the high glucose in the blood, and then it's not able to be taken up by the cells. Major problem. Okay. Let's see here. Thyroid dysfunction from lower pituitary gland release of thyrotropin commonly occurs among the elderly. So it basically, thyrotropin is the thing that you, as we talked previously, we have certain hormones in our bodies that increase this blood flow and increase the ability to function, our body to function normally in regards to physical activity and even changes that take place naturally, but we don't have the ability to, because our body becomes less efficient, and these endocrine changes occur as well with age. Alterations in hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis leading to menopause, andropause. Andropause is loss of testosterone. Specifically, the output of the adrenal cortex loses this DHEA, which is a decline after 30, which we talked about previously. And what it is it's you're losing the ability to aging occurs because DHEA has a role in aging, and you're losing that, and then so it's male. It's like the male menopause, okay, and then you have menopause, which in women, okay, occurs too as well, which is bad because it's a cessation of menses, okay, for women. So, and another thing too with, we have this, what I talked about with the andropause, you have this free testosterone in serum total, which is in the blood of testosterone drops, and so then you have this decreases in gonadotropin as well, which releases the luteinizing hormone, which leads to the testosterone, release and things like that. So these are all issues that occur with as you age. Okay, so alterations in the adrenal cortex lead to adrenopause. Alterations in growth hormone leads to somatopause. Somatopause, decrease in growth hormone secreted naturally endogenously with age. Okay. These things lead to having muscle size and strength and body composition all are affected. Body mass alterations, atherosclerosis, all of these things are impacted hormonally with aging. That's why some people take hormone therapy replacement, nutritional supplementation, and regular physical activity, which actually suppresses the aspects of this hormone related aging dysfunction. And that's what this talks about here. This is on page 594. Okay, and we talk about the adrenal, the adrenal cortex, and we talked about what that released, which is the DHEA and things like that. So, aging in the nervous system function, we have 37% decline in number of spinal cord axons, 10% decline in nerve conduction velocity, reflect cumulative effects of aging on central nervous system function. So the thing of it is the reaction time, right, to a stimulus declines, because if you, let's say that you have to react to something moving toward you, the ability for your hand, let's say you don't want something to hit your hand, you have to move your hand away from something that's going to hit it. You have to have that the response from the ability for you to react. Well, it's for your hand to move, you have to have this. There has to be a stimuli, and then the stimuli is there for the afferent nerve response to go to the spinal cord to then cause the efferent to go down to the hand for it to move. Well, if you have a decline in these spinal cord axons, okay, and even nerve conduction velocity, that means you're going to move more slowly. That is what we see with the people who age. They cannot move as quickly, and it's based on physiological reasons. Aging exerts the greatest effect on stimulus detection and information processing, produce response, which I said. And physically active young or old groups move faster than corresponding less active age group. And it's more about reaction time than movement time. Once they start moving, they can move. People, that are older can move, but it's getting moving, which is the reaction time, which is affected more so. Aging and pulmonary function, you have dynamic pulmonary capacity of older endurance trained athletes exceeds that of sedentary peers. Obviously, because they're are continuing to train, and then you have this available data suggests regular physical activity retards pulmonary function deterioration associated with aging. There's a chart, a figure on page 595. It's figure 1710. It talks about changes in maximum minute ventilation for 21 endurance athletes over a 20-year period. What it shows is that you can maintain minute ventilation, okay, with the endurance type activities. That's why it says here regular, more vigorous exercise promotes maintenance of ventilator and musculature power and endurance. Beyond the age 35, you have this decline of nonlinear rate accelerates after 45. So it declines after 35, the VO2 max, your ability to use oxygen to create ATP. It accelerates after 45, so by age 60, it averages 11% below values of 35-year-old male, 15% below values of 35-year-old female. Physical activity doesn't entirely offset aging effects on VO2 max, even when adjusting for a person's muscle mass quantity. So there's still effects as you age, but it's not as great. The one study that showed, it's obviously less. It's 15% less individuals for 35-year-old. When you look at the 11% below the values of 35-year-old males, 15% below values of 35-year-old females, we see that there is still a decrease, even with people who regularly engage in physical activity. One of the things too that's interesting is that as you age, though, that your capillaries actually remain similar with young and old individuals. So there are certain things that remain similar and certain things that change. Deterioration of VO2 max with aging factors includes age-associated muscle mass, increased body fat, altered cardiovascular pulmonary functions. For the healthy elderly, exercise training enhances the heart's capacity to pump blood and increases the aerobic capacity the same relative degree as in younger adults. One of the things is that aerobic activity is extremely important as you age. Resistance training is extremely important as well, but in regards for heart functioning and longevity, cardiovascular health is the number one, the primary variable to be included into your daily life planning, and there's a multitude of effects that occur relative to it, but it maintains healthy weight and it lowers resting heart rate by increased stroke volume and things like that. So these are things to think about. Cardiovascular and body composition, age-related changes. Age-related decrements, Matt's heart rate have been attributed to alterations in SA node activity, central node, reduced sympathetic activity from the medulla, which deals with sympathetic activity would deal with adrenaline. Okay. Reluctance of the researchers to encourage older non-athletic individuals to train all out to achieve max effort during testing. So the thing is that if individuals aren't training to a high intensity, okay, then this ability for the heart to function at a high level is going to decline, and you know, based on certain things like high blood pressure and things like that, a lot of individuals aren't training all out. They're running distance and things like that, which is like a long more of a steady state aerobic activity. Okay, we have this here. This talks about as people, what is going on here. So you have changes in waist to hip girth ratio, increase of that. You have an increase in skin folds, which is the millimeters. That's in D, excuse me. Waist to hip is C. And then you have fat-free body mass. Okay, we have, let me see here, kilograms. So kilograms, you have basically a decrease. These are people who are endurance athletes who continue to train over 20-year periods starting at 50. So you still have, so you have a loss in weight, okay, but you still have a increase in weight gained. So it offsets, endurance activity offsets weight gain in regards to sedentary versus active people who continue engaging in physical activity, but you still gain weight. Beats per minute decline, liters per minute too as well decline. Okay, so these are some of the things that change over age. Okay, it's pretty interesting. This is on page 597, by the way. All right, aging and bodily function. So cardiovascular and body composition, age-related changes. Other age-related cardiovascular changes include reduced blood flow capacity of peripheral tissues, narrowing of coronary arteries, decreased elasticity of blood vessels. Some alterations in blood composition, body fat distribution represent normal aging response. And here we talk about number of individuals. Heart disease is high, very high. Okay, you have heart disease, cancer, and stroke, top 3. And then you have number of individuals. Okay, you have this here, and it's saying that the people dying based on tobacco and poor diet, those are the top 2. Okay. Exercise, improved health. You have following summarize results of long-term study of Harvard alumni from 1916-1950. Regular exercise encounters the life-shortening effects of cigarette smoking, excess body weight. Even people with high blood pressure who exercise regularly reduced the death rate by 1/2. That's a huge amount. Regular exercise countered genetic tendencies toward early death. So individuals with one or both parents who died before the age of 65 reduced by 25% with lifestyle of regular exercise. And 50% reduction in mortality rate occurred for active men whose parents lived beyond 65 years. So this tells you everything you need to know right here. Why you need to include regular exercise in your daily life. So reduction of death rate increased relative to miles walked per week. Look at that, 30 to 35 miles walked per week. You have this reduction in death rate, almost 50%. And then exercise improved health, men on the left, women on the right. So you have this, in the middle, you have all-cause death rate risk, and it goes from, it's interesting how they have the chart, but it's low at the top and high at the bottom. So you have in low to high aerobic fitness. So you're very active, you have a low all-cause death rate. And then you said, okay, aerobic fitness, number of deaths. And here it's just talking about how you have number of deaths per 10,000. Okay, you have 64 for men, and then you have women 39.9 over there. They're low, and it's talking about really aerobic fitness and by sex. Who, um, what do they? How do they die? Why do they die, and why? Okay, so this is talking about how active they are with their aerobic fitness. Okay, percentage of different things in regards to uh, aerobic fitness and deaths per 10,000. Life extending benefits of exercise correlate more with preventing early mortality than improving overall lifespan. So it's not so much it improves your overall lifespan. It's the fact that it prevents early death. Exercise and improve health. While max lifespan may not extend greatly, only moderate exercise enables many men and women to live a more productive life. Okay, healthy life while they're alive. Sedentary white women who increase their physical activity to the equivalent of 1 mile per day of walking exhibit approximately 40% to 50% lower all-cause mortality rates than chronically sedentary counterparts. So you don't want to be sedentary. Coronary heart disease. We have here, let's see. Deaths from coronary heart disease have declined more than 35%, okay, since 1970, yet heart disease remains the leading cause of death in the Western world. 4 gender-related heart disease differences include that women usually die sooner of a heart attack. The women who survive a heart attack usually have a second episode. Women become more incapacitated by the heart disease-related pain and disability. Women are less likely to survive coronary artery bypass surgery. Okay. This is on page 598. This is percentage breakdown due to cardiovascular disease. All right. Male and female, so you have coronary heart disease, huge percentage. And then you have, stroke, and then you have other. And if you look at this, at the age levels of what are the percentage of the population that dies 80 plus in women. Okay, in women, basically you have 80 plus percentage of the population, 85.9%. Okay, and then it talks about why they die. From what did they die from? Is in the small picture on the inside the larger graph, the smaller pie graph. So it's percentage of population, okay, age range, and if what did they die from within those age groups. Okay, it's pretty interesting. So basically you have heart disease remaining the leading cause of death in the Western world. Every American who dies of cancer, almost 2 die based on heart related diseases. Death rates lag about 10 years behind men, but the gap has rapidly closed for women who smoke, and that's a major problem as well. Modifiable cardiovascular risk factors account for 89% of coronary heart disease cases. You have these modifiable things such as smoking, diabetes, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia. Hypertension, things such as physical activity, the DASH diet, diabetes mellitus. Basically, it's talked that, decrease sugar, refined sugars, okay, starches, increase fiber. Physical inactivity, excess body weight also contribute to disease risk. Heart attack warning signs. You have uncomfortable pressure, fullness, squeezing, or pain in the center of chest lasting more than a few minutes. Pain spreading to the shoulders, neck, or arms. Chest discomfort with lightheadedness, fainting, sweating, causing nausea or shortness of breath. Anxiety, nervousness, cold or sweaty skin. Paleness or pallor. Increased or irregular heart rate. feelings of impending doom. Cardiovascular disease epidemic. So at least 80% of million people, at least 80 million people, 1 person in 3 suffer in some form of cardiovascular disease. Pretty amazing. Cardiovascular disease, the primary killer of women and men. Cardiovascular disease accounts for almost 1 in every 2.4 deaths. 1 in every 2.4 deaths. Since 1980 or 1900, cardiovascular disease is leading cause of death in every year but 1918, and that's when they had the Spanish flu in 1918. Okay, that was the only year, and then it caused more deaths than it caused more deaths than the next 70 years combined. So since 1918, cardiovascular disease was leading cause of death. Every 37 seconds, a person suffers from coronary event, and each minute someone dies from a coronary event. Cigarette smoking, coronary heart disease. Cigarette smoking, passively or actively, it increases the risks for coronary heart disease. Smokers experience twice the risk of death from heart disease as non-smokers, and the risk increases further for smokers with diabetes and hypertension. CDC estimates that every cigarette smoked steals 7 minutes from a smoker's life. Pretty amazing. Coronary heart disease risk increases the more one smokes, the deeper one inhales, and the stronger the cigarette. When smokers quit, the HDL-C level, which is high density lipoproteins, which are actually lipoproteins, what are the good cholesterol, returns to that of non-smokers, and the heart disease risk as well. Blood lipid abnormalities, coronary heart disease, cholesterol level of less than or 200 milligrams per deciliter is desirable, but the risk for fatal heart attack begins to rise at 150 milligrams per deciliter. Cholesterol level of 230 milligrams per deciliter increases heart attack risk about twice that of 180 milligrams per deciliter, and 300 milligrams per deciliter increases fourfold. Triacylglycerols or lipids. Triacylglycerols or lipids. Less than 150 milligrams per deciliter is considered a normal level, with 200 to 499 considered high. So you want it less than 150 milligrams per deciliter. An elevated HDL relate causally with lower heart disease risk, because you want to have higher HDLs, high density lipoproteins. Even with people who have total cholesterol of less than 200 milligrams per deciliter, you want to have the elevated HDL relate with lower heart disease risk. Total cholesterol HDL ratio of less than 4.5 indicates high heart disease risk. Ratio of less than 3.5 or equal to is more desirable risk level. Risk of death from coronary heart disease according to blood cholesterol. As blood cholesterol levels go up, you have it over 200, you start to look at that deaths per 100, deaths for 1,000 men during 6-year follow-up. Okay, so you want to keep that below 200, but even 150 would be good. 6 behaviors favorably impact blood lipid profile, blood lipid profile, which is weight loss, regular aerobic exercise, independent of weight loss, increased intake of water-soluble fibers, which in fruit, vegetables. Okay, you have increased intake of polyunsaturated, saturated fatty acids, and monosaturated fatty acids, and elimination of trans fats, which a lot of states are trying to get rid of the trans fats anyways, because they're detrimental in regards to heart disease and actually atherosclerosis. Increased intake of the polyunsaturated fatty acids and fish oils, omega-3 fatty acids, and moderate alcohol consumption. You have four variables adversely affect cholesterol and lipoprotein levels: cigarette smoking, diet higher in saturated fat, fatty acids, trans fatty acids, and preformed cholesterol. Emotionally stressful situations actually affect blood lipids, which is interesting. You wouldn't think, oh man, So it causes an increase in the balance is thrown off in regards to this blood lipid profile. You have oral contraceptives also affect blood lipids. Hypertension, systolic blood pressure that exceeds 140 millimeters of mercury, systolic, and then you have diastolic, and it's diastolic pressure that exceeds 90 millimeters mercury. Modification of lifestyle behaviors can lower high blood pressure, such as weight loss, regular physical activity, cessation of smoking, reducing salt intake. Causes of hypertension remain unknown, however, in more than 90% of individuals. So some people, it's genetic in a lot of people. Okay, or maybe it's dietary, but they don't have they're retaining more sodium, let's say, in their they have a reuptake through their kidneys, and then it obviously ends up in the plasma, which causes the heart to pump it's harder for the heart because the blood, has it's causing this water logging effect. Okay, and so there's certain things such as that are genetic in nature that cause this. So you have to try to oftentimes the first line of defense is lowering salt intake, increasing physical activity, and then stresses and things like that. And then if that doesn't work, then obviously there's a pharmacological component after that. Diabetes. Diabetics are up to 4 times more likely to develop cardiovascular disease. Multiple risk factors usually coinciding with diabetic condition, which is they have risk factors such as obesity, physical activity, hypertension, atherogenic dyslipidemia. Okay, which you have LDLs, you have things that attach to the walls of the vasculature, which create this inflammatory response which can then cause coronary artery hardening, and things like that. Let's see if there's anything else. On page 599, it talks a lot about this in regards to certain receptors, the toll-like receptor that resides on the immune cell, and when certain harmful molecules come, harmful molecules come into the body, it can turn on this immune response, which causes this inflammatory response, causing plaques to burst, causing strokes, heart attacks, and things like that. And that's due to inflammation. Some research has demonstrated antibodies can block this TLR2 trigger mechanism, which is this toll-like receptor, to then cause this inflammatory response to not take place. Okay. Other possible, and when we talk about vulnerable plaques, by the way, we're talking about these sudden breakdown in these fatty plaques exposed to blood, and then they cause this thrombogenic component in the blood vessels that actually on page 601 it talks a lot about that within the vasculature. But other possible coronary heart disease risk factors are age, gender, heredity, immunological factors. Like we talked about this response. You have this response to this antigen, something foreign invader, that can cause this immune response that's inflammatory response by cytokines, and then it can cause these like I said, on the toll-like receptor on page 2, toll-like receptor 2 on page 599, to cause this inflammatory response inside the blood vasculature. You have homocysteine, which is elevated, which is in meat protein, too much of that. C-reactive protein, which is it looks at this vulnerability to have cardiovascular issues. Okay, and it basically causes, based on genetics, that you may be a vulnerable patient to heart disease. Okay, and another thing too is you have Let's see here. Lipoprotein. Lipoprotein is something that it's a lipid and a protein, and it's actually, it doesn't have to do with your diet, okay, or physical activity levels, but what it does is enough if you have a degree of this, it can cause issues too as well, because it's in your bloodstream, and it can cause it's a lipid that's in your bloodstream on a carrier protein. Okay, that's pretty much what you need to know about that. Fibrinogen, another thing that's a problem that can take place, is something that can build up again in the vasculature and cause problems in regards to cardiovascular disease. And so that's another thing that really needs to be looked at. And so if we want to look into that further, we may talk about it more, but the C-reactive protein is on 607, and then lipoprotein is on page 607 as well. And it just talks about which each are. And C-reactive protein is it's a painless low-grade arterial inflammation type of it shows that, and so in the coronary artery. So if you have too much of the C-reactive protein, actually up to levels that are more than 1 milligram per deciliter, it actually shows that you have this inflammatory response, and in healthy individuals actually can cause issues in regards to heart disease. Number of risk factors. So it talks about cardiac heart disease, coronary heart disease, incidence per 100,000 persons, and you have one, two, or three risk factors, and so the incidence, as you obviously have more risk factors, the incidence coronary heart disease incidence goes up.